طلبة الأعزاء، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، وأهلا ومرحبا بكم في محاضرة جديدة من محاضرات كورس مقدمة في الأدب. وسنتناول بها هذا اليوم تحليل للقصة القصيرة هابي برنس للكاتب أوسكار وايلد. فأهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم. First, in analyzing any fictional literary work, like short story or novel, we need to shed lights or write the summary of that literary work, the short story, for example, here. So we are starting here by just writing the summary of the story to know the main events of the story. So the story of the Happy Prince was about the statue of a prince who once lived in the palace of Sanssouci, where sorrow is not allowed to enter. He did not know what tears because he lived in happiness. When he died, a statue was set for him which stood tall in the city and was made of golden leaves and precious rubies. He was admired and a symbol of happiness. But on the other side, the statue sees the ugliness and all the misery of the city that made his eyes weep into tears. One day, a swallow came, which should be on his way to Egypt. The prince asked the swallow to help him and be his messenger. With the both of them working, they help people who indeed are suffering and in a misery in exchange of the rubies. The day came when all the jewels of his body gone. The prince looked ugly and shabby. The swallow never left the place to help the prince. Then the snow came. The little swallow got colder and he knew that his end has come. The poor swallow died at the happy prince's feet because the cold weather. And the happy prince's lead heart had snapped right into two. The god was seeing this. He ordered his angels to bring the two most precious things from the town. This is the summary of the short story. So now we will start analyzing the short story according to the 5 elements of fiction we have studied before, which they are the plot, the setting, the characters, the point of view, and the theme. So let us start with the plot. And if you remember that the plot consists of 5 parts. So let us analyze the parts of the plot of the Happy Prince one by one. So here we have just brief of the city, of the story. The city stood and the city stood the statue of the Happy Prince, which is very beautiful, decorated with fine gold, ruby, and sapphires. The citizens love it. However, some of them think it is not useful. So let's start with the first part of the plot in which the writer introduce or reveal his characters. So the first part of the plot is exposition. So what is the exposition of the Happy Prince? Here in the exposition, as I mentioned before, that the writer reveals the characters, the setting, and the background of the story. So in the exposition, we get information about that there was a prince who had gotten everything he wanted in life. He had not seen any sorrow in his life. When he died, people made a statue of him. The prince was determined to help his people in any way he could. So here we have the exposition, the first part of the story. So we know information about the main character, who is the protagonist, who is what? He was the statue of the happiness. This is the first part. The second part, the rising action. The rising action. So the rising actions of events starts when the swallow arrives and accepted to be a messenger for the prince, and he will deliver what needs to be taken to the people of the city. So here we have a rising action of the events of the story. Climax. So the third part of the plot is the climax. So the climax happened once all the jewels coming from the statue begin to finish. The prince decided to use his gold. Swallow begins to scrap off the gold from the statue in order to help out. The gold falls from the statue towards the children. So here we have the climax, and here in the climax, which is the turning point of the story. So uh, we all as readers, we would like to know what's next, and what's next is in the falling action, the fourth part of the plot, the falling action. The falling action happened when the swallow dies due to cold weather, and the happy prince dies from a broken heart. The statue of the prince is taken down since he is no longer beautiful and useful. Okay, this is the fourth part. The fifth and the final part in the plot is the conclusion, the end, the denouncement. The conclusion happened when God saw everything they did for the people, so the angels took them both up to the heaven. Bring me up the most precious thing in the city, said God to one of his angels, and the angels brought him the leaden heart and the dead swallow. So uh, those two things taking up to the heaven there, uh, uh, because they have done many good things in life. This is the first element of fiction, which is the plot. So let us discuss or analyze the short story, the second element of the short story, which is uh, before setting. We need to uh, shed lights or to give information about whether there is a conflict in the short story or not. So let's see. Are there conflicts in the Happy Prince? So actually, we have three conflicts. The first type of conflict is human with human, person against person. So Happy Prince against the town mayor. The mayor wants to take down the statue because he would like to build a statue for himself instead of the Happy Prince. The second type of conflicts in the short story is human with society. That all society cares about is material things. So the society is talking about the material thing, not the spiritual things. The third conflict is human with nature. And here we have the swallow with or against winter weather. So we have three types of conflicts. Let us discuss now the second element of fiction in which we would like to analyze the Happy Prince in, which is the setting. And in the setting, we have five items that we should take into consideration in analyzing the setting of any story. The first one, place. The place in the short story, The Happy Prince, it is introduced at the beginning of the short story. The first four or five lines of the short story, just giving us the place. High above the Sanssouci city on the tall column stood the statue of the happy prince. So here we have place. And there are some hints about many places inside the city, but here we mean that the place in which the story happened. Okay, not the other places. So the story happened in the city. Time. So we have late fall, autumn came, it is winter. So all these indications of time is talking about the time in the city. And we can just get information about the time from some of the words written here and there inside the story. The third item in the setting is the weather condition. So we have rain, we have it's very cold here, we have then the snow came, and after the snow came the frost. So from the speech and the description introduced or given or presented by the author, we can get information about what kind of weather they have inside the city. And the fourth item in the setting is the social condition. So the social condition means what kind of life they are living in society, whether they are rich or poor. So actually, the word poor came 13 times in the story. And this indication or this means that most of the people living in misery or in a very bad condition. So you have a little street, there is poor house, poor characters more than rich characters in the city. And the fifth item in the setting is the mood or atmosphere. Actually, the mood of this story was sad, and because the villagers lived, so villagers and the people in the city lived, so the happy prince wanted to have the villagers who were in dire need of help. This is the second element. So we discussed the first element, plot, and then the second element, setting, and then the third element, characters. So we have two types of characters actually inside the city, inside the short story. First is major characters, and we have two major characters. The first major character is the happy prince, who is the protagonist, rounded character. A prince who had no idea about the struggling life of his people until he was dead. After he was dead, his soul dwelt in the statue made by Seth. Since then, he started to help the poor as he found they live in struggles. So here we give the description of what kind of character we have in the story. Short description. And the second major character, the swallow, also protagonist. Swallow was the bird who worked as a messenger for the statue of the happy prince. When the statue donated both of his eyes, Swallow stayed with him forever. He started loving the statue of the happy prince. Again, we give a short biography or short description of the character. And then the second type of characters, minor characters. Minor characters. The first minor character is the reed. Okay, and it is Reed who just she decided not to accompany the swallow, who has been courting her, breaking his heart. She is too close to her home and cannot bear the thought of leaving. Thus, the swallow's courtship was in vain, so useless. The second minor character is the two town councillors. They are greedy and obsessed with their public image. They want the metal of the melted down statue to be made into a statue of them. The third minor character, the poor woman. Her son is ill, and she struggles as a sea mistress to make enough money to take care of him. She receives the ruby from the hilt of the prince's sword. So again, we give description, short description of each one. And when we analyze any novel, any short story, any fictional work, we need to give description of each one of the major characters and minor characters. And the young playwright is starving artist struggling to complete a play, but he cannot concentrate because he is hungry. He receives the first sapphire eye. The little match girl. She drops the matches that she is supposed to sell and is crying because she knows that she will be beaten by her father when she returns home without the matches or any money. She receives the second sapphire eye. And number six, the minor character, the mayor, who is the antagonist. Antagonist. He orders the statue to be torn down, and he wants the metal to be made into a statue of himself. So he would like to make a statue of himself, though there are many poor people starving in the city. So we finished the third element. Again, I would like to repeat the element again. The plot, we discussed it, and then setting, and then the characters. And next one is the point of view. So let us see what kind of point of view the writer used in the story. He used the third person omniscient. The narrator is not one of the characters, as you see here, that the narrator is not one of the characters, and he explained all the information related to the character by using he or she. So examples of this you see here. He had two bright sapphires. He had two bright sapphires. She has no conversation. She is a seamstress, and so on. So just all the story he is using he or she, and he is just providing us with all the information about each one of the characters. So there are actually, or there is pros and cons. إيجابيات وسلبيات في هذه الطريقة. The pros, so just let us see what everyone is thinking. We know everything about each one of the characters. The cons gives too much info and loses interest of the reader. So as a reader, you may lose your interest because you know everything, so you don't expect anything else. The final element of fiction in which we would like to analyze this short story is the themes. So, what are the themes of the Happy Prince? The first theme is that outward beauty is nothing, it is just a show. جمال الخارجي لا شيء فقط مظهر. The real beauty is the love and sacrifice. والجمال الحقيقي هو الحب والتضحية. So here we need to explain each one of the themes. So the Happy Prince has the art, but this art is full of sympathies for the poor and the needy. He sacrifices his eyes and beauty just to help them. He gives away his gold, covering a bit by bit to the poor. Now, without his eyes and gold covering, he looks so ugly that he is sent to the furnace to melt. He has lost outward beauty, but with the sacrifice and love, he has achieved spiritual beauty. God is pleased with him. After his death, he is taken to the city of gold where he will praise God forever. The same happens with the swallow. He sacrifices his life for the love of the Happy Prince. Nevertheless, he also achieved spiritual beauty. He will sing for evermore in God's garden paradise. So this is the first theme. We have another themes. Theme number two, love and sacrifice are two saving forces. So by love and the sacrifice, you can save yourself and you can save others. This world is full of poverty, hypocrisy, and exploitation. If there were no love and sacrifice, the world could not go on its axis. It is because of love and sacrifice that this life is going on. Therefore, it's true that love and sacrifice are two saving forces. Theme number three, there is a great gap between the rich and the poor. هناك فجوة كبيرة بين الفقراء والأغنياء. The rulers and the masses. Therefore, it means that the rulers at that time did not know about the problems and the difficulties of the masses. الحكام ما يعرفون بمعاناة والمآسي اللي تعانيها الشعوب في كل زمان ومكان. So, symbolism. Actually, there are symbols used by the writer inside the short story. The first one, the Princess Leatheart. The Princess Leatheart symbolizes immortality. This is because when the Happy Prince is being melted, they could not melt his heart. So, because it's lasted forever. The second one, the second symbol is the swallow. The swallow himself is a symbol of loyalty, al-wafa. Since the beginning of the story, is refused to leave Egypt with the others and stayed to court the reed. He then decided to stay with the Happy Prince because he was loyal to them both. So, I hope the lecture is useful. And at the end, I would like to thank you very much and see you next lecture. Thank you.